Mage, do you like freezing your enemies where they are? Well, have I got the build for you? This is my level 50 Evoker build. I'm going to go over the skill tree, items, abilities, all that fun stuff. So let's jump straight in with our skill tree. Now this is how it looks. Now bear in mind, specializations do not unlock until level 20, and one half of the path will not unlock until level 30, and the other level 40. So my advice, if you're starting this from the beginning of the game, is to follow this as best you can, get towards the Evoker, and then unlock it as you go, working on the other branching paths. If you're respeccing, then obviously just follow this as we go. Now the amount of points we have to work with in this build is here. And let's jump straight in, and our first ability coming south, Fade Strike. This is a really good ability. It means you basically strike after a Fade Step, and it's awesome. To the top right, we're going to take Quick Recovery. So mana regeneration restarts 25% faster when paused by spending mana or taking damage. To the north of that, we're going to take Mind Blast. This is a great early level spell, and it's pretty handy in higher levels because of how easily you will pull aggro. Even with the Warrior Taunt abilities, I don't think they work that well. Mind Blast can be a lifesaver. To the top left, we're going to take Charging Spirit. So staff energy generates passively when you're not in combat. And to the bottom left, Mortal Concentration. This basically just buffs up your R2 attack if you're playing on a controller, and just makes it hit harder. Really useful. Now coming back to Charging Spirit, we're going to go north to Frost Nova. This is a really good ability for early game. This is also a really good ability I find for any build, because you can just sort of freeze enemies in place and it's awesome. To the top left of that, we're going to take Bulwark for the physical resistance, again reflecting what I said about how easily you pull aggro. To the top right of Frost Nova, we're going to take Frostbite. So damage versus frozen plus 15%. So again, we can now freeze enemies and then we'll do even more damage. To the top left, we're going to take Fade Reflex. So this is a nice way of just basically, it's like a perfect dodge. And it's really, really handy if you can land it properly. To the top left, we're going to take the passive of Necessary Steps. So this is Primer Duration plus 20%. And this leads us to the top left again for Breathing Room. The radius of area abilities effects is increased by 50%, meaning with things like Frost Nova, you can freeze more enemies. And below that, we're also going to take Shattering Control. So control abilities deal 75% more damage versus armor, which is incredible. Now coming back down to Fade Reflex, we're going to top right, and we're going to grab Providence for the Advantage Duration plus 20%, because then this will lead us into Ethereal. Control abilities grant Deflect after you deal a critical hit, and Deflect is awesome because Deflect means the next attack that goes through your defenses doesn't land. And below that, we're going to take Zone of Destruction. Hitting 3 or more enemies with an area ability grants enhanced damage. Enhanced damage increases base damage by percentage. So pair that with your frozen ability of Frostbite, and you'll be dealing even more damage. Now to the top left of all of that, we're going to take Clarity in Suffering. Whenever you take damage, you regenerate 5 mana. Mana is what equals your abilities, so it's an awesome way of regenerating mana if you do get hit. To top left again, we're going to take Ice Storm for cold damage plus 10%, and on the other side, we're going to take Traumatize for takedown damage plus 15%. Now takedowns already do really good damage, but this just buffs it up, and takedowns are landed once you fill up someone's stagger bar. To top left, we're going to take Ice Blast. Ice Blast is incredible. Control Blast ability costs 2 mana, applies Weakened, which means this will synergize with your teammates, and you effectively just hull ice an enemy. Enemies will be rendered chilled, and chilled is damage over time, and more importantly, cold damage over time. To the top left of that, we're going to take Improved Health for our extra 100 health, and to the top right from our ability, we can take Meditation for mana regeneration rate plus 15%. To the top left, we're going to take Absorb. So whenever you defend against an attack, staff energy is charged by 25%. And then we're going to round out the skill tree at the top. So top left, we're going to take Greater Authority. Control abilities cooldown is 20 seconds faster, and Ice Blast now has a cooldown of 40 seconds instead of costing mana. So this is just an incredible way of being able to pump out more abilities more often. To the north, we're going to take Block Mastery, so block mana costs minus 30%. You will probably find yourself blocking often because of how aggro works, like I said. And to the right, Zone of Infusion. For every enemy hit with an area ability, you generate 10% staff energy. Now if we come back down to Meditation, we're going to follow the path down to the right and take Mana Infusion. So performing a takedown grants 50 mana and 33% staff energy. To the bottom right, again, we're going to take Early Frost, so maximum chill stacks +1, meaning we can stack up the chilled, meaning we can stack up the damage over time. To the bottom right, Bolt Volley. Now this is an amazing ability if you can land it, because if you do, you will throw additional bolts at the enemy, causing more damage, but it does take some little timing to work out. And then to the top right, this leads us into our Evoker specialization, leading us again to Vortex of Shadows as our ultimate ability. This is incredible. It's like a frosty black hole almost. It's amazing. To the top right, we get our next ability, which is Anthropic Sphere. This is an area projectile, costs 2 mana, applies weakened, so again synergizes well with teammates. And essentially, it's again like a black hole. We just pull enemies within, causing cold damage and then blasting. It's amazing. Now to the north of that, we are going to take Ice Storm for an extra 10% cold damage. And to the top left, 2 fires. After using a projectile ability, your staff attack fires an additional bolt at your target for the next 6 seconds. To the right, Onslaught. So, 2 squares, and then you hold it, and you'll do a charged light attack damage, which is a big boost. To the north, we're going to take Staff Mastery. So staff light attack damage plus 25%, maximum staff energy charges plus 1. To the top left, Quicken Strikes. So final staff attacks imbue the ability, reduce the cooldown of your abilities, again, pumping them out quicker. And at the end of the skill tree, Withering Charges. Light staff attacks reduce an enemy's resistance to your staff damage type by 5% for 10 seconds, debuffing the enemy, causing you to have a greater damage. Now coming back to Anthropic Sphere, we're going to go the other way to the right, and we're going to take Heavy Weaponry. Heavy attack damage plus 10%. Below that, we're going to take Controlled Infusion. So using a control ability generates 33% of your staff energy. To the right, we're going to continue the skill tree with Knight of Staffs. So perform a heavy attack after 2 light attacks to unleash a heavy bolt at your target. Again, this is a really cool ability. To the bottom right, we're going to take Chiromancy, so damage versus frozen targets plus 15% and frozen duration plus 1 second. Below that, Ice Shatter. Charge attacks are critical against frozen enemies. A successful attack removes frozen. And at the end of the skill tree on the right, Bone Chiller. When you have low health, frozen is applied to all nearby enemies. This can only happen once every 2 minutes. Coming back to our Evoker and back to Bolt Volley that we had, we're going to come south. We're going to take Defy the Elements. Cold resistance and fire resistance 10%. To the left, we're going to take Dark Squall. This is a projectile control ability, detonates Sunder, doesn't cost mana, only has a cooldown. So again, synergizes well, and it applies chilled on impact. To the top left, we're going to take Desolate Malady for affliction damage plus 10%, so this will boost your chill damage. And to the north of that, Multiplicity. Projectile abilities launch an additional projectile, damage type changes based on your equipped staff. To the left of that, Salt in the Wound. For all active afflictions for enemies hit by control abilities, receive 1 additional stack. Now coming back to Dark Squall, we're going to go south, and we're going to take Underestimated. So light attack damage versus health plus 10%. To the bottom right, Keen Insight. Abilities deal an additional 150 damage in a 6-meter radius when activated. The damage type matches the ability type. And then below that, Supercharged. Projectile abilities deal 75% more damage versus Barrier. Now if we come all the way back to Quickened Recovery in the middle, we're going to go to the bottom right to take Chain Lightning. Not really an ability we need to use at all, but we do need it to go south to get Concentration. So charge attack damage plus 10%. And to the right, Fade Conduit, so maximum mana plus 50, meaning more abilities. To the north of that, we're going to take Elemental Catalyst. So abilities gain 15% bonus damage based on the damage type of your staff and orb weapons. Above that, Meditation, mana generation plus 15%. To the top left, Light Armor Mastery. So when wearing a light helm and armor, staff energy charge attack plus 20%, staff energy attack range plus 2. To the north of that, Shellbreaker, damage versus armor plus 20%, and to the left, Frost Shield. Enemies who inflict damage on you are chilled, and that rounds out our skill tree. Now when it comes to items, you can only take these as best you can. Some of them you might not have, some you might have more upgraded, less upgraded, but these would be my recommendations. So for an orb, I really like the Chilled Grasp. Good cold damage, good stagger, but it also boosts our defense. So plus 30 defense, plus 25% cold resistance, applies perfect dodge, applies chilled, and plus 70 defense versus chilled enemies. For dagger, I really like the Coral Tip, deals 60 added cold damage, trigger an arcane bomb, also applies frozen. For a staff, I really like the Glacial Rod, 349 cold damage and 107 stagger, but more importantly, plus 20% heavy attack damage. Heavy attacks with this weapon apply an additional chilled stack on full staff energy, plus 50% staff energy charge rate, and a plus 2 maximum chilled stacks. For a hat, I really like the Karasis double hat, so 40% ability damage and 34 defense, but more importantly, plus 15% mana generation, plus 25% stagger on ability use, plus 30% ability damage if all share the same ability type, and 25% ability cost refunded on impact. For armor, the Orchestra's long coat, so 77 ability damage, but more importantly, plus 15% damage versus health, plus 15% light attack damage, plus 25% final attack damage, and defeating enemy deals 150 physical damage to nearby enemies. And then we have our trinkets. So for our belt, we're going to use the hard-bittened belt, so it applies high stagger in area and potion use, plus 25% takedown damage, also likely to disrupt nearby enemies, and plus 50% staggered duration. For an amulet, I like the Sightless Skull, plus 20% control ability damage, plus 25% stagger from control abilities, gain 1 mana per 50 stagger dealt, and gain precision when you stagger an enemy with a control ability. And for rings, the Band of Smoke, so plus 15% cold damage, plus 25% cold resistance, plus 20% cold ability damage versus health. 50% of all your other damage type bonuses contribute to cold damage. And the Glacial Loop, plus 20% chill damage, plus 20% damage versus chilled enemies, 25% chilled duration, and a maximum chilled stack. For abilities, we are of course using Entropic Sphere, Dark Squall, and Ice Blast. As you'll see, 2 out of the 3 of these are control abilities, so they benefit from our amulet here. For an ultimate, the Vortex of Shadows. Now when it comes to runes, these are probably going to change based on your mission, but I picked ones based on passives. So Besiege for 10% damage versus barrier. We're going to take Glaciate for 10% cold damage, and Escalate for 10% ability damage. Okay, we're here in the combat, so let's get this going. As proof for what we're doing, if I come into here, we see we're on Underdog. And this build is pretty much based around using your staff. Now you can use your Orb and Dagger if you want to, but a lot of the skills do require the staff. And let's get this started. So if we look at just the normal damage we can do, you'll see this enemy has barrier, we come out like that. Now if we were to do our first ability, you'll see we did some incredible damage there. And we can do that with other abilities as well, such as that one, which gets the weakened, and you'll see our charge attacks do a hefty amount. We also have our last ability here, which is our Entropic Sphere, and you'll see the damage from that is crazy too. Now, your base damage with your staff, again, isn't amazing, but what it does add up to is when you start chilling the enemies, and that's where you get the buffs from it. And again, these items will be more stronger when you actually are able to upgrade the items. Sadly, in my mage run, you might have noticed across some of the builds, I got very unlucky with my mage equipment and basically just found the same thing over and over again. But this is the gist of it, and you see from how far they fly, you can really send enemies off of mountains and all sorts, and that ends fights super quick, just like that. You can basically turn yourself almost into like a walking ice nuke. Now again, we also have this ability here with our staff where it charges up based on how much we use. And you'll see we can do 500 damage, and look how quickly everything is just disintegrating, and we can still get out of dodge. Now we're going to save our ultimate for when we find some more enemies, so you'll see we've got big attacks like that as well, and that is the square triangle, or the light attack, finishing off with a heavy. Okay, you can see we have a bunch of enemies here, so we're going to try and round a few up as I try and group as many together as possible, although we only have 2 so far. And obviously you are going to want to play this a bit more tactically than me. I am kind of just throwing caution to the wind to try and show off as much as possible. But if we were to now do our big attack, this is our ultimate. And there you go, you'll see we've pulled everyone within. And we can now focus on this one. Bear in mind that these enemies are not vulnerable to cold or resistant to it. and you'll see the chill stacks we have going. Just like that. Now, as I said, we have a lot of abilities that will pair. So for example, we can actually pair our Entropic Sphere or our Ice Blast with Death from Above from Davrin. So if we were to do Entropic Sphere, just like that, we can then get Davrin to come in with this Death from Above. And I messed up the timing. I'm not very good at the combat in this game, I won't lie to you guys. But you'll see we have so many really good abilities we can do as I'm now stuck within a bunch of vines. Well, that's the perfect time to show off our ability there. You'll see we popped our potion and they got frozen. And it's just such a good build at dumping out abilities, causing a bunch of chilled, and then being able to do increased damage versus the enemies. So I really hope you enjoyed this build guide. If you did, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what other items you'd use, what other abilities, all that fun stuff. If you have enjoyed, please drop a video a like and subscribe to the channel for more. I've got more build guides, I've been doing a let's play of Dragon Age and all sorts. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.